Hello, everybody. Welcome on the Lights On Data Show. Today, we're going to see how to drive company-wide metrics alignment, the secret recipe.
And I have the pleasure of introducing our today's guest. Arnaud is CPO and co-founder at Castor and former head of data at Payfit. He currently lives in France, but has worked in Japan and China and can even speak some Chinese, which I find extremely hard and fascinating at the same time. People who have worked with him admire his creativity and out-of-the-box thinking, his drive, as well as his team spirit. No wonder that the company he co founded, Castor, is driven by empathy, courtesy, solidarity, and craftsmanship as its core values. Very beautiful. Castor was built by data people who struggled every day to find the relevant data to build their predictive models and analysis. Unable to find relevant business definitions, and after making lots of mistakes, they decided that that was enough, that the world needed a Castor. And we're going to find out why today at our show. Welcome, Arnaud.
Thank you very much. Super happy to be there.
Super happy to have you as well. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Maybe something personal, maybe something professional that I haven't mentioned in the bio.
Sure. Thank you very much. So basically, I've been founder of Castor for the last almost 2 years now. Prior to that, I kind of built a data team at an HR tech unicorn in France called Payfit. But the funny thing is, I started when there were already more than 300 people as the first data people. So that was pretty intense, pretty fun. And even before that, I was at Criteo, which is a big, known ad tech company in France, who invented the almighty business of retargeting. You know those ads that follow you everywhere? They're the ones who invented them. Sorry for that.
Whoa.
But amazing experience over there. And while I was there, I lived 2 years in London, 2 years in Tokyo, and 2 years back in Paris. And it's kind of there that we kind of created an internal data discovery tool at Criteo for the 250 plus data analysts that were working over there.
Wow.
And something personal, I'm super happy to be right now just in the south of France, not in Paris where I live. I'm near the city of Marseille, which is a kind of the second biggest city in France, and by the countryside. And so super happy to be right there and have the ability to do that from remote.
Is the food good over there?
Amazing. You cannot. Honestly, they have a truffle brie over there that is fantastic that I had at lunch.
Ooh,
Fantastic.
we love truffles. We would die for truffles. Mm-mm-mm.
Yeah,
Okay.
pairing that with brie and good wine, nothing can be better.
After this show, we're just embarking.
Let's do a
We'll see you later.
remote drink, definitely.
Amazing. Can you tell us about the giveaway for today?
The giveaway, definitely. So it's this wonderful Castor cap.
Yes.
I may tell you later how the logo of Castor was made and who made it. But it's this one. It's the giveaway. It's pretty neat, pretty efficient cap.
Very cool.
Very, very good. And in order for people to get it, you need to type in hashtag Castor in order to enter the draw for today's giveaway. So please make sure you do that. And now it's time to find out why the logo is a castor and what does it symbolize? What does it stand for and who created it?
So when you look at it, what would you think it is, in your opinion, when you have it also on the show? We had different, like, I'm going to give you the craziest ones we've had, and then I'll tell you what it is.
To me, I'm thinking something that's building, something resilient that builds.
When you think of a castor or when you think of a logo? Because the logo looks like a bread.
Logo, what do you think it is? I'll tell you the craziest.
When I think of the logo, because I work in data, I'm thinking something sort of a table, like a data arrangement.
And because I think of food all the time, I think of bread. I think that makes sense.
So the two craziest one we had is an eggplant. It looks like an open eggplant. That's one. The second one we had, which is less nice, is a soul of a sheep. Which is good. And so what it really is, it's the tail of a beaver.
Yes.
Because the beaver builds, like, kind of helps structure the lake, and then we go to the data lake. So it's a not so nice a data joke that gives our logo in the end.
Well, the beaver is very industrious, and your beaver logo is very cute. How did you create it?
Yeah, we're not super proud of it, but it does the job. It's on Google Slide. So you can imagine a huge slide with a nice screenshot in the end and the PNG creator after that.
That's
But you're
amazing.
proud of it, right?
We're proud
It
of it,
stands
and
out.
it's for a simple reason is that it opens up the discussion, as we just did. Most of the time. Whether you're on conferences or you're talking to people, like there's already kind of the name and the logo kind of sparkle curiosity.
True.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
the beaver is a noble animal.
Is it
Yeah,
from the swamp
he-
there?
here in Canada, it's
Yeah,
it's a majestic animal.
well respect.
It helps the ecosystem, and like Arnaud mentioned, it helps with the lake and the data lake too. Gives it
Ooh.
structure.
Oh, wow. I love it. I have a question regarding the values. I have never seen values such as yours, and I fell in love with with the combination of those four values that I mentioned in your bio. But I'm a little bit curious about courtesy and what you meant by that, or what you had in mind when you thought of it.
Definitely. So there's this idea that almost any idea can be expressed as long as it's done in a nice way, in a way where you think about how the other is going to perceive it.
Uh,
And it's the idea of trying to put yourself in the other's shoe and in trying so that you can communicate the best way possible. And it's not something where you have to do it the right way all of the time, but you have to try. Just try to think how will the other like understand and feel about what you said, and try to optimize. Sorry, I'm an engineer of background, so optimization all the time. So to optimize the way you say it so that it's the most efficient communication and the less hurtful. When you say something good or something tough to say, anyway, it's really courtesy, and this is really what we mean by that. Not
yeah,
easy, but it's an effort we all have to make, basically, if we want things to be as smooth as enjoyable for everyone, basically.
Absolutely.
I'm speechless to that. You said it so beautifully. Yes. All right. You can start talking about data then. It is time.
Yes, good. To go on to our actual topic of the day. So, well, yeah, let's start with what metrics should a data-driven organization track? What do you think those would be the must-haves?
Besides the number of branches that you need for a bridge.
Exactly.
As a people.
I'd say the most, if you are in for-profit organization, which is the case of most of our clients today, I'd focus on simply defining what is a client. Start this way. What is a client? What is a customer? Making the clear difference between a client, a user. How did they differ? And because basically this ties into your CRM. There's a lot of processes involved in the way you define a client if you're not careful enough, and it's a problem that if you've never thought about it just very little bit at the beginning, and you do that until like very late, only very late, it's going to be tricky. You'll have to do some rebuilding at the beginning. So I think the customer, the client, is definitely the first thing to focus on. The second one is the user. What is the user of your product? How do you define one? For example, if we take two data companies we love, there is, for example, Fivetran. Fivetran, when you think about the value they create versus the number of users they have in different companies, like per company, that number of users per company is super small. There's maybe a few data engineers, but when you compare to the value created, it's crazy. And if you go back to, let's say, data viz tools such as Tableau or Looker, where you have almost all of the whole company, or maybe half of it, what is a user, what is a usage of your tool is super important, I think. And being the product guy at Castor, I can definitely tell that. And the last one, which is always tricky, and I can remember like decks long like answers at Criteo, which is revenue. And the more international you grow, the more product offers you have, the trickier it gets. And especially if you add to that the SaaS model with recurring, non-recurring, you can get extremely quickly an amazing mix of complexity in defining simply what is revenue, what is recurring revenue as well. So these are the three things, and I mentioned them because these are the three things in my maybe 2 or 3 first month at Payfit, a company already 350 plus people, people did not agree on. And I remember interviewing and hearing, like, and reading in the interview, the job description, like, we have more than 4,000 clients. And then I joined and I heard 6,000, and another time 3,000, and just simply people had different definitions. So maybe just going back to like which one are the most important one to define and to start working on. I think it's the first one. You hear people having different definitions.
Yeah.
This is the one you need to define first, because if alignment on metrics only becomes a challenge when you detect that there's misalignment. That's it.
That's true. So yeah, like you said before, really outlining what those metrics should be, you should first have those clear definitions to make sure that the metrics that you're all talking about are actually the same ones. And I like your examples with the customer, because I encounter that so often within one company, within one department of that company. You're asking 3 different people what a customer is, and they might give you 4 different answers.
Yeah, and which is crazy is that in the different departments, like almost all departments need at some point to count the number of customers the company has. Whether you're on marketing to compute ROI, whether you're on customer success, of course, but if you're in finance as well, to compute lifetime value, all of them need to compute what is a customer.
Right.
And so I think the most widely used the metric is, the more it needs to be defined, because the most likely it is to be defined differently. As simple as that.
So the harder it would be to get consensus.
Exactly, just because so many different people use it. If there hasn't been any alignment effort, you can be pretty sure that, or no ownership of what is the truth.
Yeah,
it's tricky.
Do you then have recommendations on when those clashes happen? What should be done? Is it, let's say, on the customer? The customer is a great example. You should reach organization-wide consensus on what the definition is. But then different departments might have a different need to define it differently. Should you create a new business term for that in order to differentiate and not confuse with the company-wide customer?
Excellent.
George, you're saying something super interesting here, which is it's not mandatory to have only one definition for a given metric. The key thing is you just need to understand that there are several, and you need to define which is the default one when you're talking company-wide.
Right.
But I agree 100%. And so first thing is, for revenue, you can have financial revenue, sales revenue, billed revenue, paid revenue. Like, these are valid revenues. It's just that different in definitions and in computation, right? And it's already a matter of maturity for clients, like for the clients we have, to kind of realize and kind of start defining and just putting different words on those different metrics, which is already an amazing first step. And going back to your question of when, it's, to me, again, it's simply when you have the people in charge of finance not understanding the numbers from marketing, or vice versa. It's whenever you have the first, like, and it needs to be expressed, and you need to have a culture that fosters that. Okay, like, the numbers you gave, I don't get them. Like, I don't have the same, or I'm not comfortable with yours. How did you, like, just like, or acknowledging that they're different, and thus the kickstarting this discussion of, okay, is your revenue the same as mine, or the number of customers the same as mine? So it's from the moment there are a little lack of trust, but you need to have a culture that foster a communication about lack of trust. If you put it under the carpet and whenever you detect that, say, we'll tackle it later. It would be hard afterwards.
I love that. So that first step is to determine, okay, here are the metrics that we need to get some clarity on, get some consensus on. What's the next step? So the next step is identify the people who have those different definitions. Like, who should be, because someone can then, like, when you've identified that there are, let's say, several definitions for what is a customer, and I remember doing that at Payfit, then I say, okay, who should have a say in what is a customer? And I kind of made a list, I used Notion for that, and I kind of pinged the different people, and let's say there was the CEO,
there was the VP of growth, there was the head of customer success, and so I just those check boxes in Notion, like, okay, please, and then send a Slack message saying, hey, here's a suggestion of definition. Like, first thing is, hey, you don't have the same definitions. Here are the 3 numbers in different Google Sheet dashboards we had at the time that give different numbers. Just because we are building a clean data stack, we're trying to build that as much as possible. Can you give me a definition, like using HubSpot or whatever? Or here's a suggestion of a definition. Do you approve it? And so the good thing is, my role was to get the discussion started with the different people, and then asking them, hey, do you know someone who has another definition who would not agree, that we should add to? Which was absolutely key. So you don't want someone kind of in the end that wasn't involved in the discussion to say, no, I just don't agree. And you cannot always refer to the CEO for that kind of matter.
First, I like that idea that you come up with a draft to present, because I feel it's so much easier than for those stakeholders to look at a draft and then nitpick at it and say, okay, well, not this, not that, let's modify, instead of just being blank slate and for them to come to think about it.
It's
a quicker process.
I agree. Like, it's true, but it's a bias I have, and I kind of, by pushing a definition, like suggesting one for the default, let's say, of the company default of what is a client, it is something. It's kind of a bias I create, but the people that need to make the decision, to make the call, they don't have the time to sit in a workshop of 2 hours just to define, especially in the scale up. That's too much. So, as the head of data, here's my guess. Put some comments, vote, even if you agree or disagree, and using the +1 or the emoji that they used everywhere on Notion at the time. Just let's put some votes and let's get it done in asynchronously, without having to put a dedicated meeting, unless people really disagree. And if there was no consensus, then you can kind of kickstart the brainstorming and the workshop to get people aligned.
But you know what? I like that informal way of doing it. I haven't heard of it before, but I'm definitely going to talk about it now and refer to Arnaud for that. Count the number of thumbs up that we have for this in Notion, and hey, this is a pass.
And because most of the times you have consensus, it's just that you don't know it. Or when you make a proper suggestion, then people will align, and you explain why you're making it, and you just explain to the market, to the CMO, why do the billing team does not count the same way, and you kind of put that on paper, and they can read and say, okay, I get it. I get also, as the CMO, why the official revenue is not mine, it's more the billed one, because it's the one we actually have at the bank, in a way, or should have at the bank. You start kind of building comprehension across the different business units of the company, even if the company is small.
Very cool.
So make people realize that they're different is kind of the way to then get them aligned on what they think in the same way or not.
So now the challenge, of course, even after you get that consensus, is, well, all the changes that come to play as a result of this new definition or this agreed upon definition. And there can be a lot of changes in, well, what data do we use in order to calculate the metric? What data transformation we need to do? Where do we pull it from? How it gets represented in reports? What reports do we need to go back to and identify the previous metric that we now need to update? And of course, the people side of change. And Diana deals with that on a daily basis. So there's a lot to be done there. Do you have any recommendations, or I don't know if I've missed anything?
One thing to add on top, which is the change of process as well, of let's say operational process, because, and I can remember one extremely well, which was at the previous company I worked at. We decided that actually a client was only in a given country. So whenever you had like kind of the same umbrella company across different countries, it would be separate clients. So we would have several. But what happened is that sometimes some member of the team would kind of do something wrong and just make ownership of a UK account to a French one, and then the whole data, the data. So we had checks and so on, but it broke like the pipelines because basically there was an unexpected stuff, and so we kind of had to force to change in HubSpot and later the Salesforce because there was a migration at the time, classic stuff in data, so that the process was incorporated in the tools they use that forbid them from adding a UK client to a French one, or vice versa. So the process, the tooling, the tools and the processes needs to be updated as well. And just so going back to your question, George, the amazing thing when you've aligned people and you've put that on paper is that you have a source of truth. And everything else becomes still in prod, still what people get to check every day, all of the dashboard and even sometimes in the product itself. But it's legacy. It's flagged as legacy, and it's kind of the role of the data team or the people in charge of that metric to get people step by step to go back to this new source of truth and align to it, and starting by the most popular assets. And this is something we heavily do at Castor, is try to put the focus of the data users on what is popular, because you don't want to spend hours migrating things that are never used. You want to delete them. We also help on deleting unused asset, but we also put the focus whenever there's a migration on what is the most used. What do I need to update? What contains monthly recurring revenue that I need to update because there was a change in the client definition. And you start by the most important one, and you really have this idea of that is the truth. And so when you have the truth, you have what is incorrect as well. So it's the same thing as the huge debate we faced for the last few years on fake news and versus true news. But here, in that case, because it's a company and there are defined rules and we've aligned people, there is a definition of what is true as a definition. And so you can compare and also look at how it's built technically to see if it's correct or not. And this changed everything, because when you have people who just disagree, it's not the same as a source of truth and the rest, which is legacy.
That's a very interesting take, that even within the organization we could have something like fake news. And it's true, there are reports that are not being updated, or they're not using the data sources that they should anymore. And of course, the way they calculate some of these metrics and putting them out there.
It's a metaphor I would not want to push too far, because I think there is a big difference in data in a company where KPIs are key, and especially with the job of a data analyst or head of data around truth. So we have to be quite careful, but at least when the leader, the people in charge of that metric have said, that's how we should compute it. This is business meaning and the way it's going to be computed. And so this is the number for this month. Whenever you have a different number for the same month, you're wrong. Stupid simple. But it has to be, otherwise you cannot challenge it. Yes, Diana?
Yes, I wanted to ask, who will monitor these metrics once they were established and defined?
So that's a good one. I think it really depends on the maturity of the company and where you are. So, and it's one of the hardest things is to centralize this concept of ownership of metrics, of proper metric definition. And it's an amazing proof of success when you have, let's say, a sales ops team that owns the client definition and manages its dependency upstream or downstream, and kind of proactively says, no, you don't have the same definition as ours, you should change it. I would say a first step to achieve that is you, like the truth and the computation of that truth in the different official dashboards should be done by the data team to a certain extent. And then thanks to data trainings, let's say data, I love this idea of shining away, like you're enlightened and technically and around like this, let's say, metrics alignment, the different teams that then can take ownership of it. But it's a process to build, and it's a culture to foster. Two things.
Yeah, and culture changes not as fast.
Exactly. There can be also in new companies some pretty efficient governance especially around dashboards. One that I've noticed, which is so the data team was in charge of Metabase, which is a tool you of course know, a database tool for those who don't know. And basically, the data team was in charge of they've just created one folder per department. And in that folder, there were only the approved dashboard by the data team and another folder called Sandbox. And only the data team could take a dashboard from the Sandbox and taking it to the upper level of, let's say, the marketing. So marketing department had their dashboard and a folder with the Sandbox. And so this sounds silly, but with that, they put the review process of quality, redundancy, and metric alignment that was super efficient. And the last thing is every 90 days, they would delete everything in the Sandbox to push users to request for it to be upgraded if it should. Pretty drastic, pretty tough, but it works super efficiently for them at least.
Interesting. Yeah, they catered to the culture and the needs.
Exactly. And since they started that from the beginning, everyone was used to it. So there was no feeling of removed autonomy of keeping or deleting the dashboards. Interesting.
So Diana asked earlier about who would monitor those metrics once they're established, but what about who should push for those metrics to be established in the first place? Who drives that whole conversation? Who comes up with, the draft definition? In your case, it was you, but in other companies, what role would that be?
So may I say something to this? I think there might be two people. So one person who actually drives it, the so-called sponsor, maybe someone higher up or not, and then the person who actually creates or writes down those definitions might be someone else.
Yeah, Jenna, that's a really good point. Is if you don't have sponsorship, it's a lost cause. Don't do it. If people in the leadership don't understand what you're doing and don't see the value of it, just don't do it. Or just try to explain the value of it again, but don't start the process in itself of trying to align on metric. Just explain the issues and show them the issues, but don't do it. So sponsorship is absolutely key, because if you don't have a sponsorship, you will never be able to involve the leadership in making the decision and making them own the decision in the end. So I think that this is absolutely key. And in terms of who should own it, what I saw happening is people who felt the pain of this misalignment the most tend to be the kind of project managers or kind of push for it and kind of make those really long explanation of why. So I also remember about revenue at Criteo. Criteo again is a French company but worldwide. It does kind of the link between advertisers and publishers. So it has currencies issues everywhere. So like it's really frequent for a given client, you would have like 20 or 30 different currencies and vice versa. So computing exchange rate properly was an absolute nightmare. And so in the end, it was the analyst who was getting the most challenges and questions around his computations because he was in charge of managing some of the key financials and revenue dashboards. And he was getting so many questions that he ended up doing it was actually Criteo used the a part of the knowledge repo that was developed at Airbnb. And so they've implemented it, and it was a post that was maybe 10,000 character long, explaining the differences of computation of revenue. And whenever he had a question, a misalignment, he would then send that post, say, okay, if you have a question, read it carefully because everything is in there. Happy to explain it to you if you don't get it. So going back to your question or to your comment, it's more, people who feel that pain will take the leadership as kind of the champion in finding sponsorship if it doesn't exist and getting people to align on it. So it's not necessarily always the head of it. I did it myself for the revenue, the client, and the users at Payfit, simply because I had to make a decision on what was the relevant way to compute a customer, so that we could build proper tables, just like the proper data mart, right? And I needed an answer so that I could just decide.
Thanks for sharing that story. Now, what about, we do have, managers, data scientists, BI analysts, different data professionals that are watching the show or listening to the show. And I think that they would be wondering, okay, the metrics are being defined, they're agreed upon. We understand all these processes and places where they need to be changed, but how do they ensure that they find out about it in an easy fashion? That they're not missed as part of the conversation. I think you can only do so much with, an Excel spreadsheet and an email list. How would Castor, for example, help with this?
Yeah, sure. So the answer is simple. It's around what we call data hierarchy. What are your most, like if you ask to anyone in a company, what are its most important data assets? Most people would start to answer by maybe, like especially if they're strong in data, they would think of a given SQL table where everything is like what that has the most important and valuable data at their company. And then they maybe speak around 2 or 3 dashboards that they are key to drive the business or to take product decisions. And rarely they'll think of metrics or kind of to use an overstated, an overused word, their domains, right? Yeah, sorry for the data mesh bore here. But yeah, so rarely they think this way. And this is something we try to change with Castor is get people to start from the metric. Like, okay, during your onboarding, you're in marketing, here are the top 3 KPIs that you're in marketing. Here are the top 3 KPIs used by the marketing team. Here are the definitions. And for each and so we instantiate them in Castor as what we call knowledge page. A knowledge page is a rich text page. You can add anything you want in there, but you can especially add a direct connection to a data asset, whether it's a dashboard, a Looker Explorer, or even a table or a column or whatever. Okay, you can really connect it to anything you want, but it's a direct connection. And so this really allows you to, during the onboarding of people who are going to play a little bit with data, to get them to start not by the data, not by the dashboards, but by the metrics. And then everything derives from it. There's the metrics, then there's the dashboards. And you always start also, when you think about it, and this is something we heavily believe in at Castor, is put people on always the most refined data asset they have. Don't put them on the raw SQL table if you have something more refined, more that people worked upon before. And this is why we put them on metrics. And then this metrics gives them the most used, the most well-known dashboard in the company that is official. And so you drive alignment. And then if there's no metric, no dashboard, then you maybe put them on the best SQL query that uses. And if there's no SQL query, then you put on the best table. And then in the end, you put them on the people who's the most expert on the matter. And you go this way. Always start by the most refined asset. And so the upper funnel is metrics and the way they're computed and the specific numbers around them. And the end of the funnel is, it doesn't exist, nor in a table, maybe it's in our system, but here's the person who's the most likely to give you some answers on that. And you have all of everything in the middle.
Thank you. I have a question here from Tom Ives, who's a senior data scientist. And he's wondering, what's that main technology or techniques? He's added that after. So what's the main technology or techniques that Castor is using to move through the data lake faster and better?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So Castor, and just to be clear, we do metadata. So we don't help you, we integrate with tools that help you visualize or create more data. But we play the role really here of the metadata gatherer and renderer, both ways. And we try to make that experience as efficient as it can be. So more and more tools around, more and more assets. So more tables, more dashboards, lack of definitions, and we foster that as much as we can. And we create those links. We kind of help end users find, understand, and use their data assets. So it's really, there are the 2 ways to take it. I have a data question. I need the most refined asset. And Castor, thanks to its search feature and discovery feature in Lineage, happens in that. Or there's the other way, which is I start from a data asset. Let's take, for example, a dashboard. And I want to understand, okay, how is it made? Is it the one I need? is there a better dashboard than this one? Are the tables that are used by this dashboard maybe the one I'm interested in, because the data I need is not in this dashboard, but it's in the underlying table?
Mm-hmm.
So we help map. It's really like we love to see like data basically is becoming a forest with more and more trees because companies invest a lot and it's needed. We see ourselves as the map and the compass. Crazy, sometimes scary forest. That's
I
much
like
of
that forest analogy. What happens then? Let's say in a table in a data store, if more elements get added, more columns get added, do you need to reconnect that to Castor to pick up those changes?
So basically, the good thing about Castor is we're connected to the warehouse and to the database tools and to DBT and to a bunch of other integrations as well. So we automatically detect that. The frequency depends on the type of contract we have with the clients, but typically it's minimum daily frequency of refresh. So whenever there's new columns added to an existing table that someone uses frequently, we'll notify them about it. Like quite a bunch so we need to be on the edge of what's interesting and what's not. So you need to find that properly, always by being too interesting versus too noisy, because if you start losing the users, then you never want to do that.
I like that. And from what I'm also hearing, you're combining and revealing the technical metadata and the business metadata within one as well.
Definitely. So Castor is first seen as it's a tool to democratize data access. This is really the vision: is improve the data experience as much as possible for the end users and for people and this goes through. So yeah, the final persona is the data user, the people who consume data, definitely. But we also know that if we want to help those people who consume data, who use it every day or every week or just once a month, we also need we need to help the people who create data. And we have at Castor, we have 3 missions. So vision is simple, is improve the data experience. And the missions behind, first one, I mentioned it, is discovery. Help people find, understand, and use their data assets. The second one, which is something pretty unique, is around community. It's make people realize they're not alone. Other people used and created data assets on top of their data as well. And if you're in marketing and you need finance data, maybe you should start by looking at what the finance people, like that finance analyst, is doing, the queries he built, the dashboard he created, instead of just typing in Castor like finance or whatever. Start by the people and get them to interact as much as possible. And the third one, and this is what I'm getting at, is health. And health is simply giving superpowers to people in charge so that the whole experience gets better for everyone. And we even have a philosophy around sensitive data mapping. We don't do sensitive data mapping for itself. The great thing is when you've mapped efficiently and completely your sensitive data, then you can be really chill and relax about everything else. So you can open up access, ease the access. Just permission settings would be much more relaxed on everything else because you've well-defined sensitive data. So you're going to be pretty strict on that one, but the rest is going to be pretty open.
That brings me to Ravid's question. He's wondering, who are the main users of Castor?
Yeah. And I wanted to interrupt you before you go. So everyone, I want to encourage you to, in order to enter the draw for a very, very nice Castor cap, make sure that you put in the comments #Castor. #Castor. All right. So cool. About the question.
So about the users of Castor, so definitely users of Castor, they would range from, so the core of the Castor user, I would say, is the data analyst, especially like new data analyst. If you're hiring data analyst, it's ideal. Like you're in your first 6 months, wow, like you use Castor and you discover data much more efficiently than without it. Even if people don't document inside Castor, thanks to lineage, thanks to what people do, the query history, a bunch of things that makes the experience really smooth. So data analyst as a whole, I would say as well, you have you really see it as a Gaussian, right? So data analyst is the core, And you would have business analysts as well, especially the one in remote teams who have no one to turn to ask a question. Like, and it's pretty frequent in growing organizations that some people are on their own on the warehouse running their own SQL queries without any ability to ask questions. And you would have, of course, the analytics engineers and data engineers who would use crazily the let's say lineage technologies that Castor provide to do, let's say, downstream analysis. Okay, if I change that, what's going to happen there? And also something super important, who's going to be impacted? Because Castors tell you for every asset who are the most frequent users. And so thanks to our lineage, you can also then get a downstream impact per asset. So table and dashboard impacted, but per user. Who am I going to impact if I change this? Which is great for communication as well. Like, okay, if you have an issue and so on.
Brilliant.
Yes, I have another question. So also regarding customers, when do people start using Castor? So when do people start reaching out to you?
Sure.
Or when should they?
Well, they should from before they actually start, but I guess there's something that sometimes triggers them reaching out to you.
I think so. Something we realize is even in people with 1 or 2 data members, usually when someone leaves the company, it's a huge loss because all of this knowledge. So if you have only 1 person in data or 2, and that person leaves, it's a big pain. So we do see Castor coming in when that person is about to leave, or before, or just at the beginning, to start building the structuring, what you call this tribal knowledge, into Castor, so that then there's a legacy. And I said legacy in a good word in this time. Legacy of knowledge in Castor. So even for really small companies, we do see that. And the more you grow, the more use cases come around, which is where several people doing different things. It's pretty hard to keep track of who's doing what and the dependencies of everyone. And the more you grow, there's this physical concept of entropy. Entropy is a measure of mess, and by physics law, it cannot decrease. Okay, it never decreases. If you take the good, let's say, referential, it always increases, just from the Big Bang, basically. And our role at Castor, the product we make, is here to help entropy grow as slow as possible, basically. And so the more the company grows, the better it is. But we have amazing stories with clients with 1, 2, now 10 analysts, but starting really early, using Castor and then building upon it.
Yeah, I think that would be the ideal for companies to realize the benefits that a data catalog really would bring to them and invest into it from the beginning. It's so much easier to build it up from the ground up. And but at any part of their journey, definitely is beneficial for them to jump on board and invest in a data catalog tool, especially as we're moving to adopt more and more cloud infrastructure and having different systems, and it gets really more and more complex to keep track of everything. And
great. And something about data catalogs, I remember about a year ago, or maybe more, writing an article on Medium around why I hated the data catalog terminology.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's in that, okay, cool. And the reason behind that is simply because it's the idea that people like the concept of what is a data catalog and what people put behind it. In the last decades and last few years, data catalogs were built for a persona of people in data governance, which is still a huge need today, right? But this is not why we build Castor every day. We build Castor every day to help and to improve the data experience as a whole, so to help the life of the data users and creators. And of course, we need to empower the people in data governance, but one never needs to forget that the end goal is democratize data access, easy, to make it less scary, make it comfortable, enjoyable, and so people can join in easily. And there's no this crazy step that is frightening for people who are not done it yet, basically.
Right. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love to just see who the winner is of the Castor cap. Let me just share this really quickly. And Tom Ives.
Oh. Congratulations, Tom.
Congrats.
Congrats, Tom.
And now that we are approaching the end of the podcast, I wanted to ask something about your people. So I looked at the website. I saw that you have quite a large team, and my question was, how do you choose your people?
This is amazing. This is a hard one. How do we choose our people? A few things. So the first one is we believe in building a senior team. Say like in the sense of experience. We love a ratio of 2 senior for 1 junior member, because in that case we can ramp up juniors much quicker.
Wow,
It's,
that's amazing.
can do that. It's amazing because there's an emotion in there that is fantastic. The second one, which ties to our value, it's around courtesy. There's this balance between excellence and care, which is key to maintain. Even more with the context of full flex, in the sense that everyone pick whatever they do. If they wanted to come to the office, they do. If they want us to be full remote, they choose whatever they want. So this balance of care and excellence depends heavily on communication skills. Crazily, no matter your job, no matter your position, you have to be good at communicating. You have to be proactive at communicating, especially on Slack. So taking a step back, try to answer broadly your question. It's around excellence, care, good amount of experience so that the team keep the right pace. And yeah, and kind of a thing for the product, for the, let's say, for the impact, let's say.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. That may be intrinsic motivation about that, and the passion about what you do. Definitely, I love it. Thank you very much. And even Susan Wall says that she loves this tip. I guess it's about the senior, 2 seniors to one junior, one maybe. And Susan, I apologize if that's not true.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
wanted just to take a quick question from Kevin Mank, if that's okay, just because it
yes.
speaks so much to a lot of situations that I've encountered. What happens when leadership does not understand the levers of their business? And what if their focus is on metrics that do not drive the business strategy forward? Any recommendations on how maybe we can influence from, the bottom up?
Whoa, tough one. I'm going to give my recommendation, which is highly personal, and engage only myself, honestly. Then it means the business is in a tough situation. If you, as a data leader, you think that your management is not focused on the right metrics or right focus for the business to grow efficiently, then it simply means you're not aligned with the strategy of the company as a whole. And you can do 2 things. First one is you think that by let's say external changes, that's going to change, and you just have to wait a bit, and you give yourself an amount of time until it changes. You can try to act on it as well, but like if it's the whole leadership team, then it's something else, right? 2, you put your job on the line. You try for it, because if you're not happy, like personally, I've been in a situation like that, and I didn't put my job on the line, and I kind of regretted it. Well, I did kind of put up the call and said, okay, these are the 2 issues. Here are kind of the evidence that this way or not this way, and so on. And it's super hard, but you have to be confident in trying to influence them as much as you. But it's a risk. It's a huge risk. And so if you want to take it, it's up to you. But if there is a matter of strategical alignment and you're not aligned, and you think it's a mistake, either you think like the wall is going to move, or you try to steal the wheel, or you jump off the car. But there are 3 solutions: the wall moves, the car turns, or you jump off the car. But for others, and you decide which one to pick. But and most of the time, if you steer on the wheel too much, people may push you out of the car. So it's a matter of it's pretty deep. I'm sorry for that answer, but I don't have any better than this one, which is yeah. And as a
Love it.
data leader, it's something you can face, you can see, and you have to take the good decision for that, for the company and for your career, for both. I
Love
would say.
it. Love
Nice.
it.
Thank you for sharing this personal take on it. I love it. Maybe we now again, because we're ending the podcast. Can we put up the website?
Yes.
So
Please,
we
everybody,
encourage
check
everyone.
out castordoc.com to learn more about Castor and what it offers.
And make sure you follow Arnaud on LinkedIn as well. And make sure that you do visit the website, because there's very, very, very cool nuggets on the website. I loved it. It was really, really good. So thank you very much, everyone, again, for being here, for commenting, for sharing your energy. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you very much, Arnaud, for being here, for being for sharing so many insights, and for being so personal in some of the answers. I think that brings great value to the show as well. And we hope to see you soon again.
Thanks, thanks, George. It was
Thank you,
amazing.
everyone.
Great chat.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.